Hello, welcome to Working Dragon Mystic, where we discuss real, metaphysical, and occult knowledge so that you can manifest real and tangible results in your life. This week, by viewer request, we're going to be discussing the Fae Realms, so stay tuned. Okay, I've been getting a lot of responses to the videos we've been posting on Fae. And one of the questions I've been getting quite a bit is about the Fae Realms. So because of that, I've wanted to actually take the time to share my current understanding and knowledge of the Fae Realms. Now, you might say, Drake, why do you state it like that? Well, most of you know, my primary practice is with Norse magic and dragon magic. And I know to a lot of people that seems a weird combo, which I plan to do a video to address that as well. But I do, because of the dragons and how often they work with the Fae, I have indeed been blessed and had the opportunity to work with the Fae a lot, and actually spent some time in the Fae Realms. So it is true, I am not the go-to for all that is on the Fae Realms, but I do seem to be lucky enough to have a certain understanding of the Fae Realms that I can at least share with my viewers, and hopefully you can build upon that. And of course, I am planning to work with the Fae much deeper and actually learn far more about them later on, which is actually going to be done in the form of a path working. And if I understand correctly, the Fae are actually wanting me to be publishing or sharing that in some fashion. So with any luck, that will pan out and manifest and come to pass. So the Fae Realms, first off, the Fae Realms is specifically the realm where the Fae call home, or even their home of origin, because the Fae can be found in so many different realms and planes, but the Fae Realms is their home. That's the place that they originate from, to the best of my knowledge, originally. Now, the Fae Realms is a massive plane. I know people talk about how the astral plane is the largest plane. I spend a lot of time in astral travel and soul travel, and it's actually difficult for me to tell which one is genuinely larger, the Fae Realms or the astral plane. And I've heard magicians go back and forth on this. They say all planes fall in the astral realm. But when you get into soul travel, you realize the astral realm only goes so far. But the Fae realm seems to reach past that in a lot of places. It also does seem to connect or overlap with a lot of planes as well. At this point in time, I have not actually found a plane that most people work with that isn't connected or overlapped by the Fae Realms in some way. At least that is within that astral plane level. Once you get into soul travel and you move past the astral into like the causal plane and the mental plane and those are areas I haven't really researched well enough to say whether or not it connects there. But that is one of the areas I want to research in the very near future to answer that question. So you have a realm that overlaps all these other realms. I mean, let's take just the view of Norse mythology. In Norse mythology, you have the 9 realms, one of which is Midgard, which is here, us, the physical realm. And yes, the Fae realm connects to and overlaps all 9 of those realms very easily, and even then some, and other pantheons, and Olympus is actually connected to the Fae realms in some areas. So because of this, the Fae do have a lot of allies in all these different areas. And yes, the Draconic realms also do have a connection to the Fae realms, and it does overlap the Fae realms at a point. Though the gate is still locked up, you still can't access the Draconic realms without knowing exactly how. That is one of those doors that you have to know how to open it to access it. And the Fae do a very good job of protecting their allies' gate to make sure no one tries to break in. And I do plan to do a video on the Draconic Realms in the future. Now, that said, other than just the sheer massive size, the Fae Realms, as from what I've found, is divided primarily into two halves, each falling under what most people would know as the Fae Queens, the Seelie and the Unseelie, oftentimes referred to as summer or winter, or light and dark Fae. Depending on who you're talking to, they'll use different terminology. Me and myself, I do tend to use the summer-winter terminology. So that's probably what I'll use mostly in this video, or try to. I do sometimes revert back to light and dark, but I'll try and keep it steady. So now, one thing you do find in the Fae Realms is the names of the Fae Queens. People have argued and debated, and what are their names? This was something that plagued me for a long time. And why could no one ever agree on these entities' names? Why? And I found out pretty early on in my workings, the reason is the names of the Fae Queens have never, in human history on the physical plane, been recorded in any way or spoken. Every name that the Fae Queens have been called by is a stand-in name, a name that they give, that they choose to be called by, that has no power over them. This is why we do see so many different names. Now, the names that they currently go by, that most people, I think at least in modern day, know them by, is the Queen of the Unseelie, or the Winter, is Mab. And the Queen of Summer, or the Seelie Court, is Tatiana, which, yes, most people will know Tatiana came from Shakespeare, but they love art and literature the same as we do, and they took a fancy to those particular names that we created for them, and they just took those on as a way of giving us a way to reference them and not having their true name. Because if you remember in our video on working with the Fae, a Fae and their true name is a very important thing. They won't give it out easily. And in the case of the Queens, they won't give it out, ever. The Queens hold a very specific role, which we may do a video on later. And because of that role, no entity is allowed to actually know the Queen's true name. That would be a very dangerous thing indeed. Now, you often hear that the Fae Realms is divided into many, many more sections, not just two. And that's largely because inside each of those two sections, it gets further divided. Now, I've been able to identify and been made aware of at least 6 other divides on each side. And each of those sections is overseen by a Fae Lord or Lady. I have not at this time had the privilege to sit down, talk, and spend time with these individual lords and ladies, though I am looking forward to that in the future, and it is part of the path working that I am getting ready to set on. So that's going to be a really awesome thing, and I'm hoping to be able to share that information with you all very soon. Now, as far as I can tell, or I'm theorizing, I should say, each of those lords and ladies represent a portion of the half of the year that the court represents. Because the courts do change power, or where they rule and control over half the year. So one half of the year, one court's in charge of one area and one court's in charge in the other area. One thing that people ask me is, what happens? Why does one gain power and one lose power? And this is actually an inaccurate version of what's happening here. One court doesn't lose power and one gain power. Instead, you have to look at it in the versions of summer and winter. And this is actually why the courts get the name summer and winter. So when it flips, what happens is, if you look at the equator, when it's winter in the northern hemisphere, it's summer in the southern hemisphere. And then correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, please, but at the equinox, that flips. So you now have the winter half in the southern hemisphere and the summer half in the northern hemisphere. And that does happen, twice a year. And it's at that point that they change positions. It's more of what half of the areas that they have the dominance over. So currently, at the time of filming this, it's now August. And by the way, we're having a bunch of storms and everything. So if you hear that racket, I do apologize. Um, so currently, the winter court actually holds sway because we are past the point where it switched, which I want to say was in July, mid July, early July. Um, and it will flip again at Yule. Now, so we know we have two separate courts. The Fae Realms are divided into two halves. Those courts are further divided by different lords and ladies. Now, beyond that infrastructure, how it further breaks down into the Fae culture, that's where I am still learning. I'm still very sketchy in those areas. What I do, however, know is both the elemental planes and what's referred as the primal elemental planes. Those are actually two separate sections of planes. They all do intersect and connect with the Fae realms. So because of this, you will find a massive amount of energy, both primal and elemental, within the Fae realms. Especially out in the Fae realms, where it is often referred to as the Fae wilds. Some people use the term Fae wilds for the Fae realms itself. But exploring the Fae realms, I've learned that they are actually a separate section because there is a more wild, a more untamed part of the Fae realms, and they are quite dangerous actually to wander around in. And in those Fae wilds, things do become far more primal. I've even heard some magicians refer to it as prehistoric. And when you wander around, the entities that you encounter there, they are very aggressive. They are very protective of territory. So I do get the concept of prehistoric, but I don't know. To me, it just feels primal and wild. I don't really feel the prehistoric side of it. I don't know why. Because I'm pretty sure it's been there longer than we have. So by that definition, it would be prehistoric. But it has continued to grow just as we have. So it's not stuck in the past. Perhaps that's why I don't feel it's prehistoric. Now, because of all this massive energy, one thing that is definite, the Fae Realms is just saturated top to bottom with magic. I have never located an area in the Fae Realms where magic is not just ramped up to 20 on a scale of 1 to 10. And this makes it a fascinating place for a magician or a practitioner to visit and research. Again, though, working with the Fae can be some of the trickiest and, in some cases, hardest because of the Fae laws that we covered in another video. And because of those pitfalls, that does make it difficult to work within the Fae realms and negotiate those differentials there. So a lot of people don't want the hassle of it. And I get that, believe me. Honestly, that's the reason I've avoided it for so many years. But making the allies and friends that I have, the few that there are in the Fae realms, and now being presented with an opportunity to learn directly from them, I am really, really looking forward to studying and researching the Fae realms much deeper. And I'm also looking forward to being able to share that with you all. Now, one thing I did notice about the Fae realms, it does seem to shift and change its geography quite a bit. It's true, the Fae realms proper doesn't seem to shift and change as much. You might see a hill here and then it's gone, or you might see a mountain one day and the mountain's gone, or a building is slightly shifted in directions. But the Fae wilds, they are almost constantly in motion and shifting. You can't guarantee that the path you follow will be there 2 seconds later. So you really got to be careful when you're out in those Fae wilds. Not only are the animals and the entities out there very wild, the landscape itself is constantly shifting and changing. So it itself almost is aggressive, and you can't guarantee the path you follow in will be there. So you better have a way to get out on your own accord without following a path. Now, some people do wonder, how do you access the Fae realms? Well, the Fae realms are very, very close to our realms. So most of the time through journey work or trance work, it's real easy. You can actually just focus on the Fae Realms and you'll move over to the Fae Realms. This is not generally considered a recommended way to do it because you don't know where you're going to land. And if you landed in the Fae Wilds, you could get yourself in some trouble pretty quick. So generally speaking, the way most people try to find an area is to find an area where Fae hang out or conjugate here in the material plane, and they find Fae that they know they want to work with, and then they will move to the Fae Realms through a tree. A large tree can be used as a gateway. A water source can be used as a gateway, or quite possibly the most popular is actually a fairy ring, which we have talked about, is indeed a gateway, but you do still have to be careful and make sure you're not trespassing. So before you do this, work with the Fae in the physical here and now in your area. Get to know them and ask their permission and ask them where a gateway that they use is so that you can access the Fae Realms. That way you have their permission, they show you where the gateway is, and through trance work you can utilize that gateway to access the Fae Realms. And you can actually say you had permission. And that will get you in to start exploring them. But again, do be cautious. Make sure you've watched our other videos on working with the Fae and Fae Law, and make sure you're ready to really dot your I's and cross your T's while you're there. Now, I do plan to do more videos in the Fae series, and I'm actually hoping to share some actual magical gateways that you can construct that will actually give you specific locations to check out. I just have to make sure I have the permission to share that information here on these videos. Because again, I work with them, they are my friends, but I'm not going to betray their trust. I'm going to share what I can with you as best I can. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this quick primer into the Fae Realms and a small discussion about it. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notifications anytime we release a new video. Join us for our live streams Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Sunday 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we stream live, we talk about different topics, and I take questions from viewers and do my best to answer your questions as best I can live right there. And you can also go back and rewatch some of our old live streams here on the channel in the playlists. Until next time, everyone, I'm Drake, and this has been Working Dragon Mystic. I'll see you next time.